Welcome to The Explainer. What if I told you your words aren't just descriptions? What if they're actually commands? That every time you speak, you're laying down the tracks for your own reality. Today, we're diving deep into that very idea. This Explainer is sponsored by the Other Way Marshall Consulting, who focus on personal sovereignty and safety. Let's get into it. This quote from the strategist, it just nails the core idea. Your words are the very blueprint for your actions. And look, this isn't some positive thinking mantra. This is about precise engineering. When you get rid of the ambiguity, you create a straight line from your intention right to the result. Think of it like this. If you hand a builder a blurry, vague blueprint, you're going to get a shaky house, right? Well, your actions are no different. When your language is fuzzy, your outcomes are unstable. So today, we're going to learn how to sharpen our speech to build a much stronger reality. Okay, so what are we really talking about when we say action-oriented language? It's a conscious practice. It's about deliberately choosing words that lock you into action, words that remove all the escape hatches. The whole point is to close that gap between what you think and what you do, so you're relying on your own intent, not on abstract things like hope or luck. And this slide, this breaks it all down perfectly. There are two states you can be in. On one side, you have the passenger, where life is just something that happens to you. And on the other, you have the driver, the one who is actively doing things. This is the fundamental shift from just being an observer to being the pilot of your own life. So before we can fix anything, we gotta find the leaks, right? Our language is often filled with what we can call passive leaks. These are subtle little ways we give away our personal power and kind of hide from the responsibility of our own choices. Let's take a look at some of the most common ones. Let's start with the number one offender, the word try. Think about it. Saying I'll try is really just a preemptive excuse. You're basically programming your own brain to accept failure before you've even started. Real, sovereign intent doesn't plan for failure. It commits to action, plain and simple. And it's not just try. What about words like potentially, possibly, or hopefully? Yeah, they might sound professional, but what you're really doing is outsourcing the result. You're handing over responsibility to the universe, and that just weakens your own power to make something happen. Have you ever heard this one? Mistakes were made. Notice something? The person who actually made the mistake has completely vanished from the sentence. It's like the mistake just appeared out of thin air. But the active voice, I made a mistake, that reclaims ownership. And that's always the first step to fixing anything. And the last big one we'll look at is the word should. When you say, I should, it just feels heavy, right? It implies you don't have the power or maybe the desire to do it. It turns a choice into a chore. Decisive language is clean. I will or I won't. Both are statements of power. Building this kind of mental discipline, especially when you're under pressure, that's the real challenge. And that's why I want to mention a powerful tool called the 3-minute clearing. It's a strategic internal reset, a protocol designed specifically to break that biological lock of the freeze response and restore your clarity in high-pressure moments. It helps you move with intention instead of just reacting. It's a perfect partner to everything we're talking about today, and there's a link to learn more down in the description. And hey, if you're getting something out of this explainer, a quick like, subscribe, and comment really does help the channel out a ton. We'd appreciate it. All right, let's get back to it. Okay, so we've seen the problems, these passive leaks. Now let's get into the practical side of things. Let's talk about the protocol for plugging those leaks and reclaiming the lead in your own story. The good news is, this isn't about beating yourself up every time you slip. It's about having a simple, immediate process you can use to pivot right back to direct intent. Here's how it works. And here it is, the 4-step recovery. Step 1, catch the hedge. This is all about awareness. Just start noticing when you soften your language with words like maybe. Step 2, remove try. Just delete it from your vocabulary. The choice is binary. I will or I won't. Step 3, choose yes or no. Force the decision. And if you genuinely can't decide right then, your action is to state when you will decide. I will have an answer by 5 p.m. And finally, step 4, speak the result. You state your action in the present tense, not I'm going to leave, but I am leaving. You see? You're closing that gap between thought and action in real time. And look, this 4-step process, it's more than just a language hack. It's really the foundation for something much bigger, the sovereign standard. This is about adopting a way of living that is guided by absolute intent. Yeah, we're coming back to this quote because it's everything. It's the standard we're aiming for. The sovereign standard means your word becomes an unbreakable contract with yourself and with the world. What you say happens, period. That is the source of real personal power. Okay, let's tackle the big question I'm sure some of you are thinking. Doesn't this just make me sound aggressive or rude? It's a fair question and one we need to address. Here's the reframe you need to internalize. Clarity is kindness. Deception is not. Think about it. Wasting someone's time and energy with a maybe when you really mean no isn't kind at all. It's deceptive. Being clear and direct respects everyone. That honesty, that is the foundation of sovereignty. Okay, but what about when you genuinely don't know the outcome? Life's uncertain, right? You can't always know the final result. But even then, your language can and should reflect direct action. Let's look at how to handle that. Instead of saying something passive like, maybe I can help, which is just floating hope, you state the action you're taking right now. I am checking my schedule to see if I can help. You're still describing what you are doing, which means you are still in the driver's seat. And this is where it all gets really serious. How does this apply to personal safety? Well, in a high-stress, high-stakes situation, the distinction between passive and active language isn't a language game anymore. It's absolutely critical. Imagine a dangerous situation. The thought, I should probably leave, introduces a delay. That little word probably creates a pause, a moment for debate inside your own head that you cannot afford. But the active command, I am leaving, removes that pause button. It connects your survival instinct directly to your body's motion, instantly. And that brings us to the core of it all. Your language is never neutral. It is always the first action. It sets the stage for every single thing that follows. If your words are weak and passive, any physical action you take will be built on a hollow foundation. So we'll leave you with this final thought. To change your world, you must first change the way you describe it. Intent begins in the throat. On behalf of all of us at The Other Way Marshall Consulting, thank you for joining us.